we're gonna give it just like 30 seconds because usually the stream doesn't like pick up immediately, which is really weird. We're finding.
Oh yeah.
But I know there were some folks that were on the other, waiting for the other one to go, and I just deleted that. So I hope that folks will come over to this one
and find it
and find us, because I don't know how like all the numbers work on here anyway. So hi everybody, welcome to ThNOT. My name is Nick Cartell. If you're new here, I play Jean Valjean on the national tour of Les Mis, and I use my Thursday night lives on YouTube as a way to give a peek behind the curtain to folks out there that might be interested in this life of show business. And we do lives and we do chats with makers and people in the industry, and I'm very fortunate to have this man sitting next to me. This man who's the musical staging supervisor for Les Mis, not only for Les Mis National Tour, but pretty much Les Mis around the world, as well as a Tony-nominated choreographer for the Broadway production of Water for Elephants, which is just so cool that that's just so cool.
That's crazy.
Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome, Jesse. Thanks for being here. This is Jesse Robb, everybody.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
If you will do us a favor, will you, even though I've just introduced yourself a little bit,
I liked
will
it.
you?
I was like, that's it. We're done.
That's it. Great. Will you give us? Because I know that there's a lot of folks out there. They're like, wait, a musical staging supervisor and choreographer. What does that mean? Can you kind of give us an overview of what your job is? And actually, hold on, let's go back.
Yeah.
Can we say, how did you get your start in this industry?
Yeah, that's good. The beginnings.
The beginnings.
Do you know, that's interesting. I've been asked this before, and I think, it's interesting because many people sort of wonder, do you always sort of think of yourself as a creator, or do you always think of yourself as a choreographer? And the answer to that for me is yes, but I think the stages of getting there are always a little bit windy.
Yeah.
I think finding yourself in dance captain roles and assisting choreographers in many different sort of facets, I think is pretty interesting and pretty, it's a bit of trial and error to find out what your own personal path is to starting to, be seen as a creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's my beginnings really kind of sort of stuck back in dance captain work. I assisted choreographers. I was a resident choreographer. I sort of found myself being an associate choreographer for two different choreographers, in not just theater, musical theater, circus, opera, and so all those different worlds kind of informed me about what kind of movement I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that sort of led me a little bit more into finding some language as a choreographer.
And I say all the time that there's no one way into this industry, because it's like everybody has their own path and figuring out how to get into it. You know what I mean? So I think that's really cool to know that. So what is your background as far as dance goes? Like what did you study, or was there like one particular part, or were you like, nope, I'm doing everything?
I like this one because nobody knows, or very few know, that I actually started as a Highland dancer. I was a Scottish dancer first. What? That was the very first thing.
Wow.
I know, a bit of an odd, again, just
but amazing.
But reiterating exactly what you're saying, there's no one way. And,
wow.
And when I was really, really young, 5 or 6, my father's Scottish, so there's heritage there, but I sort of saw a show at a library, and I sort of said, oh, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And my parents sort of heard me say it at 5 and 6, and they sort of thought, oh, well, he means he wants to, it was a Highland or Scottish show.
Yeah.
Oh, he wants to be a Highland dancer.
So they just put you in Highland
in Scottish dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, why wouldn't you?
Was it Highland dance that you wanted to do, or was it just
no?
Just wanted to be in a show.
On the move, but they were like, that's
literally
it, Scottish dance. That's the lineage. So I was like, okay. So I went to Scottish dancing, but it was rigid, and it's very formulaic in Scottish dance.
Yes.
And it's very traditional. So, and I'm, as a human, I'm anything but traditional and regimented and structured.
We're not rigid.
I'm not rigid or structured at all. And so it was interesting because it gave me an outlet to be able to try and find how to move, but it was in a very specific genre.
How
Yeah.
long did you do that? How long were you in those
Like
classes?
10 years.
Wow.
Oh yeah, like long time.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Long time. So, but it's interesting because I always say like everything is a full cycle and a full circle, and a lot of what I learned in traditional Scottish dance and by affiliation, step dancing and working in Irish dance and whatnot, a lot of that is really informative of social dancing now in theater and
Yeah.
how we're telling stories now in this day and age, as opposed to what was sort of the more vaudevillian way of telling musical theater and being very regimented and in jazz and theater dance and tap and really
Yeah.
high production. A lot of social dance is what is really informing how we're reacting to each other on stage. So that's kind of wild that it was a bit of a fluke going into that at the beginning, but it was
so cool though.
and now it informs everything I do, which
So-
is crazy.
Thank you, Amanda.
Bye.
Amanda wants to stay and talk with us.
Yeah.
More.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
Put on.
More wigs.
So that brings up, actually, somebody just asked a question.
Oh.
So what is your job? So let's go into this. What is your job as the musical staging supervisor for Les Mis? Are you responsible for the ins and outs, like in the big crowd scenes?
Oh.
Or are you responsible for like what? Because I know that it's kind of the thing that I love is that now that you've kind of like stepped into us with this production is you have informed the movement of a lot of scenes like in the docks and things like that. So where is kind of your purview of
Yeah.
Les Mis?
What are
I'm
my
just grabbing- I'm
boundaries?
just- yeah, well, not boundaries, because I feel what I love is that it's also very collaborative still. You know what I mean?
I think that's the key is that it's very collaborative, and I think that the worlds blend very much in terms of responsibility, and so that I'm not in any shape or form I'm given a specific piece of the show or responsible for a specific movement in the show, but
Yeah.
I think it's more that there's a collaborative process between the director and the choreographer and the movement and the staging, the direction to create a language.
Yeah.
I'm so curious on your take of this because I feel like it kind of feeds in through the entire production.
I think that it does too, and I think that the thing that I will say about this version, right, the non-turntable version of Les Mis is that
Yeah.
it has a very cinematic feel,
Very.
and I think that the way that you have helped to kind of shape the movement in certain scenes helps to continue that feeling of it being cinematic. Like let's talk specifically just the way that it works in Master of the House. The way that it works in Master of the House, where it's like, we have the blind man enter and everybody does this like lean in and lean back, and there's things like that. So what is your inspiration for when you're looking at a number like Master of the House that lends itself to be more of a big production number in a opera?
Yes.
I guess if we're looking at Les Mis as a music theater piece, it's more like an opera, right? Did you step away? Like, how did go?
I think you brought up. I think you brought up a really good example because Master of the House obviously is unique in Act 1 because all of a sudden we are in something that's a little bit more production felt, and it's got a very unique and specific physical language to it. And I think in moments like that, I think it can be very easy to stray away from the show itself in creating a production number. It's very easy to do that. What's hard is to go back to the text and find out what is happening inside of the number itself, and then find out how we're going to go from A to B to C to D in some sort of lineage that doesn't feel like it's completely essay written,
Right.
but yet still tells a story in that essay format. And that's one of the things that was kind of exciting in things like Master of the House or even in Act 2 when we're in the waltz at the very end of the show.
Yes.
The same thing, the Thenardiers have a very specific narrative to tell there, but there's an entire ballroom scene going on around them.
Correct.
And how do we focus the energy for when the narrative is very specific and when we want it to be partly colored by the surroundings? So I always find myself in moments like that, again, going back to the actual words.
Yeah.
And then from those words, when we get actually what is going to be told in that moment, then what can we explode out of that and radiate, and that doesn't necessarily detract from the narrative,
Right.
but somehow supports it in a way that you go, oh, the idea is actually really clear now.
Yeah.
I go, okay, and I can, and my mind and my eye can afford to take in all the rest because I've got the clear reason and where we're going.
And I think that one of the scenes where that I think works so well is in the dock scene, right?
Oh gosh,
it's like the beautiful work that the female identifying ensemble are doing in that moment to, you know, like there's points where it's like slow motion underwater when Fantine is like walking forward and singing about her moment, and everybody just kind of slows down, and you get that feel of it's very purposeful, but at the same time it doesn't distract from what's happening. You know what I mean?
I didn't realize I was going to get to hear all this feedback. This is so nice. I'm thinking to myself, I'm never going to opportunity, but I think you've just sort of pinned where my most cinematic moments are in the show, which is in the docks, because as you're saying, it's like the foreground of what is happening in terms of the narrative is so focused, it's like pinpoint. And then around it, you've got this ethereal world that is still existing and still taking us moving forward.
Yes.
And that's the part that was really important to me, especially as you said, without a turntable in this show, is that how does it keep flowing, but we don't necessarily lose the intimacy and the stillness of the moments that, you know, your character experiences or other characters experiences. But what is very true to cinema is that there's a world that's centrifugal around that narrative. And that in the dock is one of my favorite moments, because you still, as everybody starts to tell this world that's still happening, existing, but I never take my eyes off Fantine, and I still know what exactly she's going
you're still
through.
following a story. Someone just commented, they're like, it's like there's 3 stories happening all at once.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yes.
All right, first question from Jesse. What's your favorite all-time Les Mis song?
Ooh, it changes.
Okay.
It changes. I think as a child, I think it was The Prayer. Very much so. I think because it was very poignant in terms of how the story all came together. That too for me as a child. Now I would say it's the epilogue. It's the end of the show.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think because when you're talking again about a show that feels so cinematic like this, you really it's almost like the ticker tape or the title cards at the end of a cinematic show or a movie. All of a sudden you have the whole culmination of everything happening in front of you, and yet it's almost like all the words are happening coming down the screen.
Right.
Of like, yes, that's how that ties, and that's where that happens in my life right now, and this story, it means something to me here, and that's kind of neat to me. So I think I think the People song obviously is pretty epic.
But that also, the movement of just like how that all flows and it flows. I love the fact that it snakes down, it flows, and then that you're watching that go out. You know, like the group of our ensemble member leaving as the gates are coming in, and you have that feel of exactly. It's it's genius.
But it's as you describing it is wonderful for me, because it takes me there one more time as to when you asked me before, like, how do you get to these places in terms of creating moments in a show? And I think as you're describing it, I know then that it's been achieved in terms of cinematically
100%.
moving. You see, as you said, the people going off, the gates coming on, and all of a sudden the location has changed in what we do in cinema in a split second. But it feels like that live.
Exactly. And I think that's
wild.
really exciting.
That's
and
really
I think
neat.
it's also a testament, I will say, to our incredible ensemble. Because someone said you can watch one ensemble member throughout the entire show, and every scene, if they are a different person, they have a different storyline, and yet they're not pulling focus, right?
Yes.
It's a conversation between 2 people where you're like, oh, I'm wondering what they're talking about, but they're still focusing on the action.
Very much.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, we just had a rehearsal this afternoon. We're talking to the ensemble, and they really, we were working on one number. We were actually working on it at the end of the day, at the beginning of the show. And there's a real unison feel to that production number. Like it's really huge, and the collective of poverty at that moment in the beginning of Les Mis. But at the same time, everybody has to have a unique body. And it cannot just feel like we all of a sudden bond together with one objective. There's still a multitude of individuality in it. And seeing new people come up with reasoning today was so interesting, because all of a sudden you're crafting a bit of a different physical narrative.
Correct.
And that was really unique today, because we get used to what we've seen. And I know what people's narratives are. And I was saying, I know when someone will make eye contact with me, or I would know when someone will actually physically reach out to an audience member. But when you see new people do it, their intentions or their instincts are different.
Amazing.
And that's really neat. I think
That's
that's
really
what
cool.
what makes the choreography very moving in the piece.
So let's talk. We have some new company members. Obviously, we just announced our year 3 company that will be starting here in just a couple weeks. But let's now shift a little bit into, because I get questions all the time about casting and about like what you're looking for. What is, when you are in a casting room, when you are casting this show, when you are casting this or Water for Elephants or whatever else you're working on, what are you looking for from somebody that is walking into the room?
Many things, but I think one thing that sticks with me as having, for a long time been a performer, I don't think I ever trusted or believed this ideal that the folks that are watching you in the room are not looking for perfection in the performance in that audition. It's not about finding that exact delivery or that exact step or that exact memory of the choreography, but it's really relaxing into it and finding your own sense of it. I find that's very unique for me, because I find that I was saying to our intimacy coordinator yesterday, that I was, and an intimacy director yesterday, I was saying, I don't work in everything being unison. I don't work with everybody looking the same. I don't look for that, and it's not something that's innate in me.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking for people in the room, I keep trying to find the idea of themselves presented in whatever they're delivering. And then whether it's perfect or not perfect, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But the actual humanity behind it and the commitment to it, that's where you're going to actually pull something for creating a piece or creating a production number or staging something. You're going to find that in how they deliver it personally and uniquely. And I don't think I ever trusted that in the process when I was a performer. Yeah. And to me, even in discussions on teams, and I end up working with a lot of different casting teams and different people on the creative team, that same sense of commitment that you just walk in, you do it like you would do it, and you take that information that's given to you, or if there are ideas thrown around in the room, you kind of play with it and go with it. I feel like that kind of commitment steps leaps and bounds over the precision.
There you go.
Especially in dance and movement. Make it your own. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we've got time for like one more question, because then I've got to go on stage. Gotta go do the show.
To rehearsal.
And you have to go to rehearsal.
Yes.
Someone asked, what is the best piece of advice you ever received?
Oh, that's a great one. I think to actually round this conversation out is that something that you had said at the beginning was that I was very, very lucky in repeatedly hearing the piece of information is there's no one right way to do this career, because I didn't fit. I didn't fit the ensemble mold. I didn't fit every single company. Obviously, like many of us, you audition for jobs that you get, you audition for jobs you don't. I never saw myself in the choreography that was out there 20 years ago. Now I'm creating choreography that's different than was 20 years ago. Yeah. Whether it's good or bad, it's different. And I think that advice...
It's getting nominated for Tony Awards, so I think that it's pretty good.
No, that advice, that advice, that every path is different and that you cannot compare yourself to somebody else who's succeeded in this industry, because your route will zigzag, it will sort of swerve. And if you continue to be confident and believe in that you've got something to share with the industry, you're going to make your own. You're going to make your own formula. And I feel like that's something that I'm so lucky, again, to have heard.
Well, and I also think that we're very lucky that Broadway and musical theater and this genre is changing. It changes every single day with
really
the music that is coming out, and it's so I think that it's really exciting, and you still have we have classic shows that are like Les Mis, but those have also updated and changed, and we're able to very
much. I've heard people say to me, I don't see choreography that I like. Then do yours.
Create it.
It's open to create.
Amazing. Jesse, thank you so much.
Nick, thank you for having me.
This
is wonderful.
This was wonderful chat, and we will have you on again. I would love you to come back.
Yes,
amazing.
I love that.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next week on ThNOT. And thank you. Someone just said break a leg and have a good rehearsal.
Oh, thank
there
you,
you
Sam.
go.
Thank you.
And thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you tune in ThNOT on Saturday night with Haley. We only got 2 left before she leaves. I know, before she leaves us. But thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks,
and we
Vanessa.
will see you. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.